Hello, good morning, good afternoon. This is Ginny of Soul Pet Connections. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. And today I wanted to talk about beginning with the end in mind. This quote comes from The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, which I love because it brings together a whole lot of ideas that help with leadership and empowerment and all that kind of stuff. But what struck me when reading this is that it applies to our pets too. And I think most people miss this when they're working with their pets, and it's part of why they end up struggling because they forget that they need to focus on the end at the beginning. So, people always struggle with things like incessant barking, pulling on the leash, scratching furniture, not wanting to be caught in the case of like horses, or running away, if your dog gets loose or your dog is even in the backyard. And the problem is that in the middle of those moments, we get caught up in what's happening in the now. And what can happen that's even worse is that if this has happened more than once, or even just once, we often are already focusing on what happened that we didn't want. So, if your dog got loose once and ran away, the next time it happens, what's the thought in your head? Oh my God, he's going to run away again, right? Or the dog's going to bark at that dog over there again. Whatever it is, we get caught up in what's happening. And so the picture in our minds is what's happening or what we don't want to have happen instead of what we do want to have happen as the outcome. So if the dog is barking now, what do we want? Well, we would want a calm dog, right? Or we would want the dog to come back to us, or we would want the horse to willingly be caught, or the cat to go scratch the scratching tree and not the couch. But we're too busy focusing on what's happening right now, and we forget about the end. And so while we're in the middle of attempting to correct our pet's behavior or change our pet's behavior, we end up, the only thing that's in our head is what's happening that we don't want. And it doesn't matter whether it's leadership or our pet's behavior. If we're too wrapped up in what's happening that we don't want, that's all we're going to get. So the reason trainers can have so much more easy success with animals is because they've done it 10,000 times and the end result is clearly cemented in their head. It's like, without a question, this is the result they expect from that animal. Even if they've never done it with that animal, they still have a picture of all the other 10,000 times they've done it with another pet. So they really have that end in mind very, very clearly in order to get the result. And then they give the pet back to you, and again, it falls apart. Well, because it's a different mindset. So what can you do to shift your mindset so that you have a clear picture of the end when you begin? I actually had a client situation where this ended up playing out. And one of the things that she told me in the session was that she had trouble with the dog running away, right? Classic example. And frequently the front door would not get shut good and the dog would escape. So now the dog is running, and the dog would run so far that they'd have to get in the car to go find her. And they lived in a busy area, and she was petrified the dog was going to get hit by a car. And there was some guilt coming up from the kiddos, because it was often the kiddos that kind of let the door open. And so now there's fear, there's anxiety, there's guilt, there's shame. All these emotions are swirling around. And the dog would just keep running. Even if they saw her, she would keep running. Well, with that kind of energy floating around, I wouldn't want to run right back into that. And a lot of people inadvertently punish their pets when they come back to them. Well, that teaches them that there's something bad when they return, right? So that's not helpful. So we talked about the scenario, and I said, well, when has she come back to you? When has the dog returned? And she said, well, in the backyard, she'll run up to me and flop down and she wants belly rubs. And I said, okay, so that's a really strong memory and visual that you have of a time when she does come back. And so we talked through the scenario of the next time she gets loose, instead of worrying and panicking, what if you took a deep breath and brought up that picture of her running up to you from the backyard and flopping down for belly rubs? And I said, the next thing you do is you crouch down, right? You crouch down on the ground so that you can rub her belly. And so what if that's what you had in mind before you called her back to you? Had this really clear picture of exactly what you want to happen, because that's what she wanted to happen, right? She wanted her to return. So we talked about it and wrapped up the call. And then I don't even think it was a few days later, she messaged me and the exact thing had happened. The dog had gotten out again. And this time she was able to stop and do exactly what we talked about. Take a deep breath, hold the picture in her mind of what she wanted from the dog was the dog to come back running up to her. And she squatted down and called the dog, and the dog came back. That's the power of our mental picture. And that's the power of knowing exactly where you want to go. And if you're not sure, that's when it's time to call in a trainer or watch videos online or, read books or whatever. There's a plethora of information available. You can spend as much or as little money as you want. The library has books on dog training, There's articles on the internet all over the place. There's people you can follow on Instagram. Dog training, horse training, cat training, whatever you want. Like, there's lots and lots of people who can show you what it looks like. So go find what you need in order to create that mental picture. Sometimes it is ideal for a pet to work with a trainer because the trainer can help solidify the correct response so that when you're a little weak and shaky, you have a little bit more to go back on. It is hard when the blind are leading the blind. Like that is challenging sometimes. But it doesn't have to be that way. So you can journal, you can write, you can watch videos, whatever. There's tons of information out there. But if you're not getting the result you want with your pet, the first thing I would check is what's in your mind when you're asking. Is it the outcome you don't want? Or the bad thing that happened one time years ago? Or however often it's happened? Or is it what you do want? If it's what you do want, then we can move on to training steps and make sure that your body's in the correct position, that you're giving the right cues, you're giving cues that the pet understands. Like, then those steps can come after. But if you don't have the picture in your mind, you should not move on to the other steps. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. So I hope this is helpful. Let me know in the comments below. Tell me about situations you've had with your pet where the wrong thing has happened or where you were able to make a change. I'd love to hear your stories. This is Jenny Brandon of Soul Pet Connections. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. You can find me on the web at soulpetconnections.com, connections with an S, and on Instagram and Facebook by the same name. Have a great day, guys. Bye.